All right, Yishai Fleisher, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice to be with you, Jake.
Nice to be with you. Let's talk about the solution. What is the solution, the long-term solution to the Israeli-Palestine conflict?
Well, first thing is that solutionism has been shown to be a problematic outlook in general, because sometimes you have a conflict and you don't necessarily have solutions immediately, and it's a kind of Western idea that, like, we're going to get to 2 + 2 is 4. There's some kind of math that if we do this math, then everything gets solved. So it's not always formulaic in real world, and it's not formulaic in conflicts. As my mom always tells me, the Balkans, people there fought for centuries and continue to exist and thrive and have children, but they continue to have conflict. So first thing is, when we talk about solutionism, we have to be cautious, because it becomes a kind of preoccupation. Like, okay, we got to do everything to solve the conflict. Sometimes you have to accept the fact that there's going to be a conflict, that there is a conflict, and that you're going to have to deal with it. That's actually part of the solution, which is we're not going anywhere, the Jewish people. We're not going to give away our land. We're not going to succumb to the jihad. We're not going to move back to Brooklyn or to Poland. We're back in our homeland. We're at home. And there's another, group of people that we've had conflict with for now 100 years. Hopefully we'll solve the conflict, but not necessarily in a, solution that is like readily available. That's just a kind of like a thought that we have to have, because sometimes we get too excited about the idea of, like, I know I'm going to come from the outside and just solve the conflict.
Well, so what's the solution? I mean, do you have an idea? Like, is it one state? Is it two state? Is it you kick out all the Palestinians? Is it that they all live peacefully together? I mean, what's the solution? What's your vision of a solution?
Well, I think the first thing that has to be understood is the map. Okay. Before we even, delve into, we have to assess the problem. There is one Jewish state, one ethnic national Jewish state within an Arab region and a much broader Muslim region. And there's an effort to try to get rid of that small Jewish state. And that effort has been going on for 100 years, as I said. And so we have 22 Arab countries in a landmass quite much bigger than the United States. And we have, not to mention the Arab countries, there's also Iran and Turkey, etc. So the solution is that Israel gets to live on its land and continues to be strong. And the way to move forward is to recognize the Jewish people's rights in their land, respect it. I don't know about recognize, but respect it. And then a strong Israel surrounded by strong Arab countries in a region that I rename the Abrahamic region, because we're the children of Abraham around here. And in that kind of region where there's ethnic national states, and they're all successful and strong, like Saudi Arabia, like the UAE, God bless them, let them be on their lands, and Israel stays on its land, and we work together for regional prosperity. That is the proper end goal.
So what happens to the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza?
Well, what happens is that there are, again, Israel is a minority of peoples within the broader Arab majority.
You're saying these qualifying statements. I'm just asking you what the solution is.
Well, because those qualifying statements are important, because I was trying to say solutionism is dangerous, and it sometimes makes us, like, it's a kind of, if I may, it's not personal, but it's a kind of superior attitude. Like, okay, we're gonna come with the solution. So I'm saying the solution is actually quite simple: a Jewish state with well-adjusted minorities living as residents in the Jewish state. Residency is a much broader category than citizenship. Pro-Israel, non-jihad Arabs and other minorities living in Israel as residents of the Jewish state, and the Jewish state being a healthy ethnic national minority state in a broader Arab Muslim region. That's the way forward.
So it'd be a one state. Would it incorporate the the Arabs within Gaza and the West Bank? Would they become part of Israel, or?
Certainly. Anybody who is not non-jihadist and pro-Israel, and you've got to fit that category, right? And if you don't fit that category, then you don't get to stay. But if you fit that category, then you get to stay. And then we have pro-Israel minorities living amongst us. We're very comfortable with that. As long as nobody tries to undermine our sovereignty and our security.
And you wouldn't be concerned then about losing the nature of a Jewish state, because if you're incorporating a few million Arabs from the West Bank and Gaza, wouldn't Israel lose its nature as a predominantly Jewish state?
That's why I said that's why I said residency, and which means that you can't vote us out. That's number one. Number two is that I don't know how many of the folks living here right now will qualify for the qualifiers that I laid out, which is non-jihadist, pro-Israel. And if you can do that, then we're in good shape. I'm not worried about it then.
How do you know what does that mean? Like, do you ask them, hey, do you want to kill all the Jews? And if you say yes, then you don't get, like, is there a quiz, or how do you tell if someone's
It's really not so tricky. You see by their behavior. It's very obvious. You see it by their textbooks in their schools, by the stuff they post in social media, by the stuff that their mosque says, by their attitude to the law. If, for example, they're involved in criminality that shakes down businesses in the South and in the North, as we have with a lot of Arabs today, with gangs of tribes of protection rackets that run protection rackets. There are many examples of anti-Israel. If you're running guns, if your textbooks call to kill Jews, if your music or your social media says to do that, if you call to the destruction of Israel, if your imam or your mufti, whoever it is in your mosque, is telling you that Israel is illegitimate, those are telltale signs of anti-Israelism.
So I have a couple questions there. One is, if someone, I'm just writing this down. So if someone goes to like a school, or if someone's part of a community, they're, 14 years old, and they go to a school that teaches some of this hateful rhetoric, it sounds like they would be expelled under the system, or what would happen to them?
We can't abide with people. Just the other day we had rockets from Iran, and there were many Arabs in Eastern Jerusalem and in the areas controlled today by the PA that were standing out there cheering and hoping for the destruction of Israel with these rockets. If a person is like that, then he has no place and no right to stay within Israel. Yeah. And by the way, when Saddam Hussein attacked Kuwait and the Arabs, the Palestinian, so-called Palestinian Arabs that were living there were cheering, they were all summarily booted out. So that's really the rules of the Middle East. You want
to abide by the same rules as Saddam Hussein?
Absolutely. If when it comes to survival of the Middle East, if you have, but that's just a trick question, because
it's not a trick question. I'm saying, like, should we?
What does that mean?
Look up to that guy?
I don't look up with him with everything, but like, does Saddam Hussein breathe? Was he an evil man? Yes, he was highly evil, like sickly evil.
So why are we looking to him for moral agency or leadership?
Jake, the point that I was showing was that there are rules of engagement in the Middle East, and it wasn't Saddam, it was the Kuwaitis. Yeah. It was the Kuwaitis who kicked them out. The Kuwaitis were like, you're pro-Saddam in my land. You want to see the destruction of the state that you're in? So they kicked them out. The Kuwaitis were like, no, bro, we're not going to tolerate our country. Same thing with the UAE. Same thing with Saudi Arabia. If Saudi Arabia about 2 years ago, chopped 82 heads off, I think it was 82, of ISIS folks who wanted to destroy their country. It's very simple. If you have people inside your country who call for neo-Nazism and want to destroy you, then you should not allow that, and you should do everything to stop that. You should not accept somebody who wants to destroy your tiny Jewish state within your state or on its borders.
That's a tough thing to
it's really common sense-ish.
I hate to be.
I love these questions. Like, are we gonna be like Saddam Hussein? Like, bro, we're talking about.
You said it. You brought his name up. You were like, I wanted.
Jake, admit your mistake. You misunderstood. I said to you, the Kuwaitis kicked them out. But besides the point, there are rules of the Middle East. The Middle East.
I have a
The
question.
Middle
Does Israel
East is
want to
not.
be a
It's
Western
not.
country, but Israel identifies as a Western democracy.
Oh, really?
It's a Western country supported by the U.S.
Thank you so much for telling me what Israel identifies as. That's fabulous. But let me tell you something. I don't see it that way at all. We are a Middle East country with a Middle East people. We're an ancient people from this area. A majority of Israelis are Sephardic from Arabic countries. So do me a favor. Don't tell me that old line like we're the only democracy in the Middle East. Like we have some Western elements. We have some democratic elements in our country, but this is a Middle East country that needs to survive in the Middle East. Okay. And so that's the way we have to think about things. Also, we're not an American style country since we are not a democracy for all its people, but a national ethnic state. So therefore we're much more like Middle East countries. I don't like the haughty attitude. I don't like the condescending attitude towards my Arab cousins around here. Okay. This is a region. I'm not here to be way better than the Arabs. That's a total like American Jewish like mythology that has been created. That's not my attitude at all. My attitude is survival. I'm here to survive, and I'm here to push back against bad guys. And I absolutely do not I do not throw off the rules of the Middle East. It's part of the ways to survive around here. I accept the rules of the Middle East, and I'm a Middle Easterner.
I also want Israel to survive, and there's a lot of people like Yuval Noah Harari comes to mind, or Thomas Friedman, who say, "Hey, we really, really, really want Israel to be strong and to survive, and to have a really good reputation in the world, like they did prior to October 7th." And there are some critics that, there are some people who love Israel so much that they criticize the war efforts, thinking that Israel is being overly aggressive and is part of the global and has caused, in some cases, global condemnation of the war efforts. I know you're probably going to say there's a lot of anti-Semitism, and yes, there is. My point is that as someone like you or I who ultimately wants to see Israel thrive, isn't there a good argument to be made to say, look, war is a complicated thing. There's pros and cons, and what has Israel really accomplished these last 12 months? I mean, they've hurt their security. They've hurt their relationships around the world, right? It sucks.
Yeah.
Maybe they should have. Maybe they shouldn't have been so aggressive. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, the majority of Israelis and people like myself don't see it that way at all. What we see is the big mistake that Israel has done is that it allowed very unsavory forces to build up a military machine against us in South Lebanon, in Gaza. We're talking about miles and miles and hundreds of miles of tunnels, rockets, thousands of rockets, guns, RPGs, grenades, drones, every single thing to attack us. And we've allowed that to flourish right beneath our nose. And now it's time to push back on those kind of forces because the Jewish state's first responsibility is to its citizens, to protect its citizens. And that's point number one. So we have to destroy the bad guys that have encroached upon us and want to destroy us by their very statements. They say
to what extent, though? Sorry, I hate to interrupt you. I hope
to an absolute extent.
So let me just
that's number one. Number two, yeah, sure. But there's an important thing which I completely don't agree with your. I don't know if you're just playing devil's advocate or you believe it, but I don't agree with the idea that the so-called world, and I say so-called because the world is a big place. I don't agree with the idea that the so-called world will not respect Israel when it fights back bad guys. I actually think that people respect us much more. But and I have a simple, Jake.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt you.
That's okay, Jake. Let me interrupt you right back.
Go for
it. If I would ask, scientifically speaking, when was Israel liked and respected more? Was it the day after the 6-Day War, or was it the day after the Oslo Accords when we started giving away our land to our enemies? And the answer is scientifically that world opinion was quite much more with us when we were strong, when we were badass.
But it ain't now.
And it's coming back because Israel's showing after we started killing Nasrallah, after we started getting rid of Hamas leadership, people are seeing that the old Israel is back, the one that fights for its rights, the one that pushes back on the jihad. And the jihadists understand that we mean business. And the anti-jihadists, if they're the Saudis, if they're the UAE, if they're the Poles or the Hungarians, the good part of America, etc., they're like, go Israel, go. Okay, you got to be a leader in the destruction of the jihad. And you know who else? Thousands and hundreds of thousands of Arabs in Syria who see us pushing back the Assad regime that murdered them and displaced 13 million of them. Iranians. Do you think the Iranians want to hear that whole, stuff that you laid out, like, oh, Israel should be soft? You think the Iranian people who have been dying in the streets because that regime has been murdering them with no recourse for protection for themselves, you think that they want Israel to be strong? We know, because there's tons of expat Iranians living in Los Angeles where you live.
Well,
do you think a
Lebanese person wants to be bombed?
He doesn't want to be bombed. He wants us to bomb Hezbollah. Again, you're saying these things. I had a video on my YouTube channel.
It's not so simple. It's like, there's destruction. So do they want to get rid of Hezbollah? Probably. Do they want to get bombs? And it's not as simple. I guess my question is, isn't there?
They want Israel to get rid of Hezbollah. Of course they do.
Even at the expense of the destruction
there's videos to prove it. There's videos to prove it, including a big Lebanese intellectual, which talked on TV. I had him on one of my YouTubes. And there's a ton of people talking about that. They want to get rid of the bad guys.
Why can't there be nuance? So, like, okay, fine. Let's say in 100 years from now,
there's no nuance with the Hezbollah terrorist who has dug a tunnel to kill Jews.
Let's say in 100 years from now, Israel's in a different position.
By the way, what's not nuanced about a small Jewish state surviving and also cooperating like the Abraham Accords for a better future of the Middle East? That's quite nuanced.
Well, they're not cooperating with the Geneva Convention, which says that you can't have settlements in the West Bank.
The Geneva Convention was written in the 40s to protect from the likes of the Nazis, who literally ethnically cleansed places that were not theirs and then put in their people and started capturing land. This has nothing to do with it. And that argument has been so disproven over and over again. Every jurist in the world knows that the Geneva Convention has nothing to do with us. This is our land. The land is recognized as ours in 1917 and 1920, 1922. The world recognized that it's known historically that this is our land. Everybody knows that.
The West Bank, specifically?
The West Bank. The West Bank is the heart of the Jewish story. That's where all of Jewish history. You can say West Bank. That's a nice word that the jihadists invented. But the fact is this is where we're from. This is where our whole history is. This is the heart of the Jewish state. The Jewish state is in Judea and Samaria, what you would call the West Bank. And so,
according to religious claims, right?
Not religious history. There's history and archaeology. You said religion. I didn't say a word about religion. Okay. I said archaeology and history, which, of course, religion corroborates. Yes, our religious belief corroborates that. There's no question about it. It calls for that. And by the way, this is a religious region, right? People respect religion. People respect God around here. Nobody respects, secular talk, endless secular talk. But if you, for your sakes, I can explain to you that for your way of thinking, Judea and Samaria is the heart of the Jewish state, was recognized such by the British and by the League of Nations, and of course, it's our historical homeland. These things are.
Can I ask you about that? I might be just misinformed. So because you're saying it's recognized. My understanding is that there's global consensus from the Fourth Geneva Convention in the UN saying, okay, when Israel attacked in 1967, they took the land that they weren't supposed to occupy it, and now the continuous settlement is breaking international law. And what's interesting to me is,
Jake, are you being serious when you're asking this stuff, or are you trying to play devil's advocate?
No. Well, so this is
if you believe that the Fourth Geneva Convention, which was written against the Nazis who were taking up, trying to swallow up Poland and Czechoslovakia in order to create their Lebensraum and their vision of an Aryan Europe. And you think that the Jewish people back in the area that was called by the Persians 2,500 years ago, Yehud Medinta, the Jewish state, if every scratch that we make in this land finds our archaeology and our history, if you think these are related things, you have been sorely misinformed.
So then I'm mistaken.
And serious jurists have made mincemeat out of that bogus argument. It's like
the international community views Israeli settlements in the West Bank as legal.
Please,
is that wrong?
The whole terminology of international community. The world is a diverse and filled with many different peoples. Let's
use that term then. The diverse world views the settlements in the, as they called, West Bank to be illegal. Like, what do we do with that?
Did you notice the little verbal trick you just said? I said to you that the world has diverse opinions, and you said to me that the diverse. I
want to give a title to the world, like whatever we're trying to refer to.
There is an element of progressive, woke, international left that have created narratives that the Jewish people have no rights in their ancestral homeland, and some folks at the UN believe that, but those are lies, and there are many countries who stand against that. And even if there was 0 countries who stood against that, I'm not beholden to the world's opinion of the Jewish people. If it was for the world's opinion of the Jewish people, we'd be already all, burnt up, gassed and burnt. The fact is that we Jewish people know our truth, and many people who know history or know the Bible or are anti-jihad know that Israel has every right to its land and has to continue to fight to survive there.
But why that area? Like,
what do you think?
Maybe it's missing. Why that area?
Like, because that area is the heart of Jewish
According
history.
to what? According to, I'm saying, I know it's in the Bible, but where like, who said that? Like, I don't understand. Like, why can't they take over Egypt? Like, I'm truly missing this. Like, I thought that the West Bank and Gaza were not part of the partition for Israel.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if how deep you want me to delve into this, but the bottom line is this. The Judea and Samaria, what you call the West Bank, is actually where the Jewish state always existed. If it was the Maccabees, if it was
but now we're talking about the you said you're not going to go into religious texts.
I know this might sound confusing, but the book of the Maccabees are a historical fact. They were a sovereign Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel. It's not a religious question. There was a first temple. There was a second temple. There were sovereigns there. They ruled. The Maccabees came before Herod. They came in the Syrian Greek era, and the wars of the Jews with the Syrian Greeks at that time are well told in history books. Afterwards, we fought with the Romans. Then we rebelled against them again. And it's like to make it just because it's in a religious text, to make it therefore it's only like a God thing is silly. The religious text,
but that's not how we like decide things like in the world about laws and countries. Like, we don't say, Jesus went to, like, I'm just saying we don't use that in arguments for how countries should be formed. I could say, the Palestinians were there.
It's funny. It's funny you say that because the Islam, which is the thing that surrounds me.
I don't support Islam's.
You may support or not support all you want, but you made a statement that the world doesn't do this or that. And I'm telling you that the world does a lot of religion and how they decide things. Just because in California, this young Jew doesn't make decisions that way doesn't mean the world doesn't do it that way. All right. That's number one. Number two is we have a history in this land. We are right now a third commonwealth. Do you understand that? Forget religion and God. We're the third commonwealth in this land. Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, is where we're from. That's where the cities that all of our history is in. I happen to work in one of those historical cities. It's called Hebron, and Hebron is where the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs is. It's also a place where King David had a seat of sovereignty. Then then in the Second Temple, Herod built this magnificent structure. Jews have lived in that town, lived as sometimes an ethnic majority, other times as an ethnic minority for 3,000 years. Okay, we've lived in this town. It's our town. We're from there. Okay, and other important cities like Jerusalem are today's modern Third Commonwealth capital, but it was a capital in the Second Commonwealth and in the First Commonwealth. Our history is actually how people decided our rights here. How else would we have yearned to come back here if it wasn't for our history? How is it that the Balfour Declaration and the San Remo Accords and the mandate for Jewish Palestine in 1922, which was signed by all member states of the League of Nations, how is it that they recognized Jewish sovereignty in this land? Because they were like, historically, the Jews are from this land. This is Jewish land. Okay, there's never been a Palestine. That's a joke. Okay, there's been 2 Israels previous. Now this is a third one, and we're back based on our historical connection to this land. Not to mention that we purchased it and won it in wars, et cetera, et cetera. So the point is that Judea and Samaria is the heart of our land. And when you come here, you recognize that the Jewish state is in the process of assuming more and more sovereignty to the point that'll be a normative part of Israel. That's what's going to be in the end.
Earlier when I was asking about the solution, you're saying how the existing Arabs in this area in Judea and Samaria would become residents. My question to you is that one of Israel's founding principles, as articulated in its Declaration of Independence, promises equality for all its inhabitants. So, how do we square that with like having residents?
Well, there's elements of equality, right? Equality under the law, equality how you treat people, and equality of opportunity. But the Declaration of Independence says it over and over and over and over again that it is a Jewish state. So how do you square that? So I'm giving you a solution, which is you square it by having a Jewish state that's created for the defense of the Jewish people, a minority in this region, and others want to live with us and will be afforded safety, security, and upward mobility. So it's not through total equality. You have to realize.
Equality for Jews.
Equality is not the major thing here. This is a Jewish state trying to protect the Jewish people. We're a
equality
minority
for Jews, and then if you're not Jew, not as much equality, but maybe they'll have equality with each other. And then like the Jews will have equality, but the Jews will have more rights.
These are all Western words you're using. You're trying to shoehorn a Western concept onto the Middle East. The fact is this is an ethnic region, and Jews have zero equality in the numerous countries around here. Not even approaching. I'm saying there are liberal values of giving people upward mobility, freedom of congregation, etc., freedom of speech, etc. But it's not meant to be a state for all its citizens. It's meant to be a Jewish state. That's what its raison d'etre is. It's to protect the Jewish people. And remember, it's a tiny portion of this land. So you can talk to me about equality and all that kind of stuff. If you're looking for equality, America is awesome. But if you're looking for a Jewish state, that's what Israel is. And
then we should change the Declaration of Independence for Israel. I'm not trying to be.
You haven't read it well, really, because if you read it well, you'll see that actually it's much more concerned with the fact that it's a Jewish state. Much, much, much more, because the word democracy isn't even in the Declaration of Independence. And the point is that it's clear to everybody that the first principle of the Jewish state is surprise to be a Jewish state. That's what it's there to do. It's not meant. Nobody envisioned that the Jewish state, after people came out of the Holocaust, nobody was like, oh my gosh, we have to be the only people that now offer total equality to the Arabs and the only place where they're going to have a right to vote and they can vote us out. Nobody thought that. That's absurd. We have to treat people with decency, with opportunity. Of course, those that don't hate us. But you have to understand that equality is and by the way, and I don't deny that it's a beautiful principle, but it's not the principle of national states that, like, for example, like Kurdistan nearby, which is there to protect the Kurdish people. And nobody thinks that you should now give all their various tormentors, or the Armenians. Nobody says to the Armenians, now give the Turks equality in your land. Nobody says that because they know that the Armenians and Turks fought for centuries, and you have to protect the Armenians. You have to protect the Kurds, and you have to protect the Jews. It's really, again, it's really common sense stuff. Sometimes in America, we don't understand these things because we come from a completely different style state, which is an awesome country, and I respect it, but it's a different style country.
Can I ask you, like, just your general opinion about, like, the more, I guess, liberal Jews or the more, like, left-leaning Jewish opinion that, like, there are, I think this is important. Like, I have friends who feel that whenever someone criticizes Israel or criticizes the government, that they must be anti-Semitic, because why are you criticizing Israel when you're not criticizing the war in Yemen or Syria or whatever? Why are you focusing on the Jews? You must be anti-Semitic. And I think that's so problematic. Like, I think it's so important for Israeli society and for Jews to be able to be self-critical. I mean, even if the government right now is, like, let's say, acting perfectly, if there ever were a time where Israel, there was some evil ruler, we would want to unite and say, hey, we don't stand for this. I mean, we're like, and back to my question about nuance, like, I know Israel has to defend itself. Like, is it worth your time, my time, anyone's time to have a conversation about, okay, how much is too much, or how do we be strategic here? When October 7th happened, one of the first things I thought is, like, oh my God, this is going to upend the whole Saudi peace process. Because that's what Hamas wanted Israel to do. They wanted Israel to go in and F up Gaza, and Israel took the bait. And now it's a year plus later.
It was an attack. It wasn't a bait.
But that's what Hamas wanted. They wanted Israel to retaliate, to delay the peace process. And I hate to say it, but like that's exactly what happened. And now the peace process is delayed. So how do you balance that? Like, okay, well, Hamas wants us to retaliate in order to delay the peace process. We gave in. Israel retaliated. The peace process is delayed. Do you ever think, shit, damn it, Hamas did what they wanted to do, and now the peace process is delayed? What do you think about that?
You asked like 3 different questions.
I'm sorry.
In that mini rant, and God bless you. It's your show, and that's cool. Number one, with regarding to your question about conversation, here we are. We're having that conversation, and I have no problem. I think it really depends where a person is coming from. If a person really loves Israel or is intellectually honest and wants to discuss it, I'm always for it. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be a wilting flower. But we're going to have a Middle East style conversation with honesty and forthrightness. So that's number one. But yes, conversation is possible. There are a lot of people who want to have honest conversation. Okay, that's just obvious. Second thing, with regarding to Hamas and what you call the peace process.
The Saudi peace process specifically, like Israel and Saudi Arabia becoming.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, my dear Jake. What is it that the Saudis want from Israel? I'll make, because
Trade?
of our limitation in time. I'll make it quick.
Sure.
The main thing that Saudis want from Israel is protection from Iran. What they want is actually a strong Israel to kick Iran's butt, because Iran is an amazing threat to Saudi Arabia. Iran despises that Sunni Islam controls Mecca and Medina. They hate being second fiddle, Islamically speaking. They detest them. They much more detest the Saudis than they do the Israelis, even though they detest the Israelis as well. And so what the Saudis are very good at doing sword dances and stuff like that, but what they really want is some good old protection. And they know that the Jews happen to be great warriors, and they would like is our jets, our subs in our supposed nuclear umbrella to protect them. When we are kicking the butt of the Iranian proxy Hamas, the Saudis are very happy. The Saudis just 2 weeks ago came out with a statement being like, we don't want to talk about Palestinians. Your mosques in Saudi Arabia are not allowed to mention the Palestinian cause. And the king was very forthright. What the heck? Why is he saying that? Because he doesn't want to hear any support for Hamas and for the Iranian wing of power around Israel. He wants to see us destroy them. The fact is our attack and destruction of Iranian-backed militias is something that brings us closer to a normalization. And I prefer that word than peace, if you don't mind. Normalization with Saudi Arabia,
that's which is coming, which is
coming soon. It's coming because of Israeli strength, military, economic, and identity strength. We have to have religious and identity strength. That's what people around here respect. They respect it when you believe in your God. They respect it when you beautify your capital city. They respect it when you have a temple in the Temple Mount. They respect that more than when we are weak and succumb to the jihadism that has plagued this region for 100 years.
I want to come back to something you said earlier about the solution. I think it's so important that people talk about, move forward. All these conversations are about the past, about the history, who pulled out in Oslo, or what transpired. Everyone has a different version of history.
You would prefer that it would be a historyless, a very quick.
No, I mean,
solve the problem now.
Yeah,
solve it now. Well, forget the past.
But
it's a nice colonialist way of thinking. You just come in and fix the problems. With your nowism. I get it. Sure.
We don't have
colonialists
time
are like that.
We have 60 minutes. I'm glad we're talking about the solution. I've spent so much time talking about history, and it gives me a headache.
Really?
Depending on who I talk to, I get a different.
I didn't think you were too tight on that history, but okay. Let's go on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So earlier you're talking about
solutionism. Solutionism is and what do you think that we're going to solve all the problems here?
No, but history is important too. I'm just glad myself speaking that I don't always delve this deep onto what a solution could look like. I usually focus, I think, on the past. So
All right.
you're talking about the idea that in a solution, what you hope would happen is that you have people in the, forgive me for this term, West Bank.
Can I just say, before you even ask me the question, can I just cut you off for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
You're talking to me about solutions in a time of war.
Time of war, yeah.
We're at war. And the solution right now is to fight and prosecute this war until total victory. And so I'll tell you the truth, I'm not so in the mood. I'll do it if you want because it's your show and I respect that. But I want you to know, we're in a time of war. We're in a time that we have to fight our enemies, and our enemies are still quite strong. In Gaza, we still have hostages. We still have hundreds of miles of terror tunnels and all kinds of military equipment that wants to kill Jews, kill my daughter. Okay. And we have here, I live in what you would call the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, Judea, with the heart of Jewish history. And there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of guns in the hands of jihadists. Every time I take the road, I take a risk because the bad guys are out there. Okay. In South Lebanon, you've got serious bad guys with tunnels and 20 years of procurement of rocket systems to destroy Israel. Today, people running into shelters. We've just yesterday, 4 Israeli soldiers were killed by a drone. There's elements of Iranian operations in Jordan, certainly in Iraq, and we also know that they've cut off international trade. They've slowed international trade because of their alliance with the Houthis in Yemen. So you want to talk with me about solutions? But we're in a time of war. This war is an opportunity
to
clean out the bad guys, to destroy them, to push them back. So I'm not really in so much in a mood for solutions right now. I'm here to protect the Jewish people.
Yeah.
I have a lot of buddies on the front lines, a lot. And I know people who have died. I know people who are injured. And that's where we're at right now.
We could be saying the same. I mean, I think whatever we want to call it, solution or next steps going forward, which I think the
next step going forward is to destroy the bad guys.
Which I guess are you
want solutions for this war? Israel's got to take over Gaza, minimally militarily, but hopefully in civilian resettlement as well, because that's the only way you can govern that piece of land and keep it normal. Israel's got to push back the Hezbollah to pass the Litani River and push them back so that they're not close to Israel. And again, have at least a military presence in South Lebanon. We gotta push the bad guys out of Jordan and Iraq, and the Houthis, not allow them to have one more rocket that they could shoot at us. When we have that situation, then we'll be in a completely better place. That will be a solution. And this war, as odious as it is an opportunity for a better tomorrow for our children.
What about Iran? Are you worried at all about? I mean, obviously, it'd be great if you just kill the bad guys.
Right.
But what about? If
we need to liberate. We need to liberate. It's not just kill the bad guys.
But what happens? What happens if the war escalates? Like, what are you concerned that? What if it spreads too much and then all of a sudden?
I hope it escalates.
But is there a fear?
I'd like it to escalate so that we could get rid of evil regimes that suppress this whole region. Not to mention the millions of Iranians that would be cheering wildly in the streets. But the Iranian regime is a constant threat to Israel and has killed thousands of Israelis. We have to.
Are you concerned about all out? Are you concerned about all out war with Russia backed Iran?
We're gonna have to come to that war one way or the other. It's either now or when they get stronger later, when they're nuclear powered. So I prefer that we hit them now. The fact that they hit us recently is an opportunity for us to smash that. And I don't like when we say Iran. It's the Iranian regime, because the people are not with that regime. It's well known, and it's better to have that war now as opposed to later. These guys are, they're gonna, even if they get smashed a little bit, they'll go back, strengthen their bunkers, get more ammunition. The time to engage this war is now. So I do not want to see a calming down, because all the calming down is, Jake, is just sending it down to our children. Do you have children, Jake?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I don't want to see my children have to fight a more nasty war because we weren't strong enough to deal with the problem right now. I don't want to roll it to the next generation. I don't want to pass the buck. Our generation wants to make sure that the next generation of Israelis and really people around the world don't have to face this. The war has come to our footsteps. October 7th was a dastardly act, but also a door and a window, an opportunity to make sure that our children don't have to face 150,000 ballistic missiles from South Lebanon, tunnels from Gaza, and nuclear ambitions of Iran.
Is there a diplomat? I mean, maybe you're going to say this is very naive and Western of me, but is there a potential diplomatic solution? Sanctions, because look, war is tough. Even if
sanctions
you're the stronger
is not
force.
A diplomatic solution.
I'm sorry?
Sanctions is war by other means. That's not when a country cannot have trade. That's not diplomacy. That's a choke. It's a chokehold.
You're right.
Listen, the sanctions were indeed working. They had weakened Iran tremendously. Their economy was collapsing, and then when the Obama, Biden, Harris milieu came into office, the Iranians were enriched minimally to the tune of $250 billion, and they became much stronger again. There's no question about it. Sanctions is part of war. It's war by other means, but indeed we have to all yearn for regime change. We should say that. I don't know if it's Israeli-made regime change or but
some people are scared. They're like, damn, we go to all our war with Iran, and then there's Russia, and then blah 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 blah. Often, even if you're the stronger army, war is tough, right? People die.
1,000%. You're right.
Is there any way around this? Is there any way without having all out?
Yeah, we could just calm things down. We'll just everybody will chill out, and in the meantime they'll go right back to what they were doing.
Okay.
And that's that attitude is what led us to this day today. October 7th is the fruit of a long preparation. I agree, but by the way, Jake, don't misunderstand me. I accept your point. Your point is it's not a joke, and it could lead to things that you don't expect, and war is an awful thing. So I'm not trying to make light of that.
Yeah,
I'm not minimizing that. I am saying that if we don't engage it now, we will have to engage it later, and we'll be at more of a disadvantage. So in the meantime, we've been prosecuting this war for a year, and we have esprit de corps. We have strength, and I think that the world understand or not understand, but I could see that they do understand that Israel is intent on fighting this. And I'll tell you what, Israeli people, if you offered them right now, let's go back to calmness, or let's keep fighting this war until we take care of business, 90% of Israelis will tell you, we got to fight. We got to fight right now and continue to do this until we clean out all this evil that has amassed against us for the sake of our children.
I want to share something about myself. So I know I'm debating you right now, and I'm pushing back on you being the kind of the pro-Israel side. I flip back and forth depending on who I'm talking to. So 2 days ago, I
knew you're like I could tell you're a devil's advocate kind of guy.
Well, but let me tell you,
that's fine. It's your show.
But I'm not contradicting myself, and let me explain my perspective. So the other day I debated Miko Peled, who's very adamantly pro-Palestine, and it's not that
he's an Israel hater.
Let me just state my view. So it's not that I change my perspective necessarily based on who I'm talking to. I tend to debate people who I view as kind of on the more, I hate to say this, but kind of more extreme ends of the spectrum. So when Destiny and I spoke, we didn't have a lot of room for contention. Like we agreed on a lot of things. And then when I talked to Miko, who's very far one way, and when I talked to you, Yishai, who's I'd view very far the other way, it's the people on the what I would call the extreme ends that I have some contention with. And I think my perspective, like my big thing I'm trying to do, one of the things I'm trying to do with this show is you're going to think this is maybe cheesy, but is bring empathy to both sides, right? Because I think you can be a really good, ethical, logical person and have a more pro-Palestinian view. And as long as you care about Israeli civilians and lives, then that's fine. I have no issues with your view. And likewise, if you're very pro-Israel, that's also completely great, as long as you, have empathy for civilians on the other side. And I think if both sides can have empathy for the civilian and the people on the other side, that's where we're going to have a long-term solution and peace. And so earlier,
let me interrupt you for a second, Jake. Let me interrupt.
For it.
First thing is, I want to tell you something that's a good and sweet vision and approach, and I respect you for trying to come to a humane outlook on our region and to bring people together. And I think that there's something very good and wholesome about it. But I must say to you that the big mistake that you're making is when you're saying that the Hamas side, or the guys that we're fighting with, that's the Palestinian side. The truth is that the majority of this region is under the thumb of jihadism and can't get out. Their kids are being brainwashed, their money's being taken, their food is being taken. The jihad, why do you think that so millions of Syrians cheered when Hassan Nasrallah was killed? Why? Because they saw Israel as a liberating force. And that's one of the things I said to you in the beginning. Like, if you think that there's two sides
do you have
here,
empathy for the Palestinian people?
I have empathy for those Palestinian people that want to live as decent, normal human beings, respect our rights to our land, and want decency and opportunity.
But then doesn't that require you?
But I do not have any. I do not have any. But I do not have any empathy for jihadists who want to destroy me. I have zero empathy for them. And I think that my duty,
of course,
is to fight them. But those people suppress the average person, okay, and they bring them down. And so is the Iranian regime.
Wouldn't you be concerned about the war in Gaza that's killed a lot of people? You'd say, "Oh, my heart goes out to the Palestinians."
Recently, a Hamas spokesman told the Channel 12 caught them in Israel, caught them saying that the majority of the 40,000 people, about 80%. Were either Hamas or Hamas-affiliated families.
Who said this?
A Hamas spokesman that Channel 12 caught. You could look it up, right?
Yeah.
The bottom line is this: 40,000 people have been killed. It's awful. But the majority of them are Hamas and Hamas-affiliated people. Therefore, they're combatants.
What if they're a kid that just growing up, it's in the Hamas system? I mean, I'm saying, like, if Hamas is the governing body, then everyone's in Hamas, right?
Jake, it's war. And they put their kids in front of our rockets. You know that. And it's war, but we have to fight them. We can't let them take over anymore. Yeah. Jake, you gotta have mercy, not just for the so-called Palestinian kid now. You gotta have mercy for the Palestinian kid later. Is he gonna keep being under the thumb of this jihadist, corrupt regime?
Well, he's not gonna exist if you kill his grandfather, because then he'll never have been born.
Jake, there's you sometimes talk smart and then you say these things that are they're just plain dumb because there's so many Arabs. We're talking about 40,000 people out of a population of 2 million and they're combatants. What are you talking about a guy's grandfather? If the guy wants to murder me, I have every right to make sure that he's not going to have, that his line doesn't perpetuate because he's going to be finished off because he's coming to kill me. I have a right to defend myself.
I know.
I mean, it's obvious. So let's not erase
terrorists who want to kill us. Yeah. If someone's trying to kill you, you have the right to self-defense. Full stop.
Okay, exactly. No. So let's not muddy the waters with lack of clarity. Well, I want you to know. You asked me before about American Jews. I want to tell you something.
Yeah.
It is not a mitzvah. You know what the word mitzvah means, right? It's not a mitzvah. It's not a Jewish commandment to be confused. It's not a mitzvah to always be like, well, there's always this other side, and to have the sense that, like, it's not a mitzvah to be like Woody Allen-ish and always
valuing
both sides. Yes, exactly. And I was saying to you, and I was trying to say to you, you have to value your people's life first and foremost. And second thing is you got to value the next generations that will grow up without jihadism, like the Iranian people. You're not valuing them when you don't throw off that regime that kills thousands. Do you know what they do to people who protest in the street in Iran? They take them to the dungeons. I know a woman who told me that her family members, they poke out their eyes with hot irons. Okay, anybody who protests the regime, they do horrific things. We're talking about horrific people with sick Nazi ideology. So do you want to get rid of those people so that the world could be a better place? That's true morality. Okay. But coddling them is not morality. Coddling the people who made 13 million Syrian people displaced is not morality. Just because you're like, oh, this Hezbollah guy, he's going to have a grandson. It's not morality. You got to get rid of bad guys so that everybody around here could live a better life. And everybody will say, thank you and more power to you for defeating bad guys.
I have one final question. I know we're short on time.
We have 4 minutes.
Okay. So I'm going to be really concise.
But
with
I
this
am
question.
enjoying speaking with you, and I
hope
want to
so.
take this opportunity to really bless you and continue your
I'm not frustrating you too much. This isn't
not at all.
Because I never know, everyone I talk to says, yeah, I want to have a conversation, debate, whatever. And then I feel
Jake, we're having fun.
More often than not, people's egos get bruised. And then I find that afterwards, we're no longer friends because they say they want to have a discussion and they think they do. And then I say something.
Rick, my sukkah is being built right now. I'm inviting you. Come on over. It's all good, bro. We're really talking about the future. And I could tell, and here's another aspect of knowing who you're speaking with. I could tell that you're coming from a good heart. You know what I'm saying? It's not just word tricks to try to destroy Israel, which you get a lot. You're coming from a good heart. So I respect your time. I respect your intellectual efforts.
Well, thank you. So here's my final question. So, okay. And I'm going to try to be as concise as I can. So you and I agree that if someone's coming to kill you, you have the right to kill them in self-defense, okay? So we have the right to go after terrorists. Now, where it gets confusing is where you have Hamas that's governing, this whole population. And so you can really say anyone's part of Hamas, or at the beginning of let me just finish this thing. So at the beginning of the call, you were saying, in the proposed solution, anyone who's, against jihadism and for Israel, you'd allow to live in the state. And anyone that says we want to kill Israel, well, obviously they're a bad guy. So my final question is, if you're a 14-year-old kid right now, you're living in Gaza, and sure, you hate Hamas, but you also hate Israel because you're living in Gaza and every day you're getting bombed. And sure, if you were to, meditate and think logically about the causal chain, then maybe you would put more blame on Hamas, but that's not how the human mind works, right? You're sitting in Gaza, you're getting bombed, your family member just died, and you're not sitting there thinking, oh, this is Hamas's fault. You're thinking, no, that airplane that dropped the bomb, that's Israel. And so when someone comes over to you and says, do you want to kill Israel? You'd say, heck yeah, I want to kill Israel, right? But it's not because you're hating the Jews or Israel. It's because it's because of your physical location. See what I'm saying? Like my crazy statement that I want to make is if someone's in,
let me jump in.
What do you think about that? Can't you be a good person getting attacked in Gaza? You could say, I want to kill Israel. And what you're saying is you're sick and tired of getting bombed.
Jake, when you and I are sitting in different places, you're in California, I'm in Israel. And our approach to assessing these questions is different because I'm thinking in terms of statecraft. You're thinking in terms of moral issues and questions. You're thinking about psychology. You're guessing a lot of psychology because you, frankly, don't quite know the psychology around here, but you're guessing a lot of it. You're thinking about this child, but you haven't been on the ground asking these children what they actually think. But my point to you is this. I have to determine these questions from a point of view of statecraft. What is my country going to do to defend itself? What is my number one value, which is to defend the Jewish people, to ensure there's a Jewish state, and to propagate Jewish identity, etc. So I have to ask these questions in terms of not just like moral abstract. I got to take policy. And the policy, when you have hundreds of miles of tunnels of armament against you, so you have to take a policy decision. And these nuanced, but maybe not even so nuanced, because there's a lot of other people, there's a lot of hate towards Hamas. There's a lot of hate towards Egypt that doesn't open up its doors. There's a lot of people who play with these people and their lives. We're doing our best to ensure that civilians don't get needlessly killed. But at the same time, we have to do what the Jewish state is set out to do, which is to protect itself. And that's how I, as a sovereign thinker, am thinking about these issues. But in any case, I want to really thank you for the opportunity to discuss it. It's important. And I want to tell you that I feel that these conversations are very important. I appreciate that you've given me a chance to lay out my way of thinking and for people to think about if they agree with me or they don't agree with me. And I don't expect them to necessarily agree with me. But I find that what people like is honesty. They find that refreshing, and they find clarity to be one of the missing components in our time. We have to speak with clarity today. It's not a mitzvah. It's not a commandment to be confused and to always balance all kinds of moralities and to show
curiosity.
Yes, but
and self-doubt is important. I mean,
self-doubt is not important as you might think.
Not self-doubt, but to be self-critical, to think I might not have all the answers. That person might know more than me.
But when you're thinking about what policies to implement, then that's not the way to do things. That's really the difference a little bit between a Jew outside of the land of Israel, inside the land of Israel. And I don't mean that in any belittling way. I'm just being honest. That's a different perception Our perception is, what are the policies that we have to take? The boys are in the field right now. People your age are right now in reserve duty in the field right now in Gaza. We have to ensure that those people come home to their children, that their children's future is safe. These are real. This is real policy questions and decisions, and they have to be done right. I also want to tell you that I do believe in God. I do have faith.
Yeah.
And I also want to wish you, I don't know when this is going to air, but I want to wish you a happy Sukkot holiday, which is a very special holiday.